So today I have here Laura, and I wanted to bring Laura on because I am very much so not a mom, but she is. And I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to talk to somebody who keeps it all together and keeps it healthy. She's a mom, she has, that experience. And, for me, I'm like, okay, maybe that's coming down the pipeline. Like, how do we manage my expectations? So whether you have kids or you don't have kids, I think we're going to all get so much out of this podcast. So welcome, Laura. Thanks so much for coming.
Thanks for having me on. I'm super excited to share some of my mom insights with you and your audience, Michelle. I know we've already pre-talked about this before, and we're so aligned with our practicality of seeking health and wellness. And so I think that I hope that your audience finds this conversation really beneficial from that very practical mindset of just keeping it together. I do my best. Just if you're listening and you think I have it together, I really don't. I really just do my best. And a lot of it comes down to planning, which we'll talk about.
Amazing. Okay. So when we first started talking, because we chatted a little bit before we're doing this interview, you were talking about like stages and like what to expect. So maybe kind of like let's start with that. Like what is important, like, and then what are your tips and tricks for keeping it all together in each stage?
Yes. So what Michelle's referring to in the stages, really, we spoke about how it's not about healthy eating and seeking health and wellness after you have kids, but really once you have kids, there are different stages in motherhood, which at the beginning, you have newborns, you're in this like very sleep deprived stage, and even through your toddler years, it's just quite frankly is exhausting, and just managing to feed yourself and develop a routine to take care of another human and juggle life. It's really an adjustment period. So I find it often, we spoke about how unfair it can be to have this expectation for ourselves and what we feel it's socially placed upon ourselves to eat healthy, lose the baby weight, find that self-care time. And when really the first few years, you're just really trying to do your best. And so my biggest recommendation in those early years is to really, yes, we all want to lose the jiggle and the excess weight and kind of get back into the routine that we had before kids and incorporate our kids into it. But really the biggest focus during these early stages for me, it would be to seek to get more sleep, so that if you feel a little bit more rested, then you don't enter that vicious cycle of drinking more coffee, eating more carbs, going through the ups and downs, or I say carbs are like sugary or energy centric foods, making better choices, right? And sleep, I've learned after having three kids, and we've had students and all sorts of things, people come through our house, is that really focusing on that quality sleep allows us to just be in a more centered, more restful, and enter this more of like a mindful, we kind of can make decisions from a more mindful place, right? Not just you're able to step out of survival mode and really enter into looking at the big picture. So my recommendation, if you're listening, you're going like, yeah, what's sleep? So I used to have this shift. I call it the night shift mode. So my husband and I found a time that worked where even when I was nursing, like I would just pump earlier in the day and have milk in a bottle, and I would just we had a cutoff time. So like my nursing or my feeding times were all the way till 2 a.m. And after 2 a.m., he picked up that shift. So, and if any of our kids woke up after 2 a.m., then there was a bottle that I had pumped ready in the fridge, which he warmed up and handled. And of course, as a mom, it's really hard to not like hear your baby cry and then your boobs start to drip. Like, I mean, honestly, it was tough, but you do
This sounds
learn.
awesome. Boobs
But you
dripping.
do
Sounds
learn to
sounds like a good
prioritize.
time.
Okay, if I can just get that block of sleep, right, the next morning, you're not so much on edge, right? So you can then go, okay, instead of starting my day with like a big cup of coffee, which I did obviously, but and then a bagel and then something else and just trying to survive, you're kind of feeling a bit more human. And so those are the early stages that I talk about, right? Like finding your balance through feeling, however you can do it, feeling more rested so that you can make better choices. So you have more energy if you have the clearance to go back and exercise, right? So the thing that I prioritize, looking back, I should have prioritized more is the feeling rested or trying to get more sleep, at least like non-broken or uninterrupted sleep, so that I could make those better choices and feel less pressured, right?
Yeah, and maybe it's even a good idea for people, like if you are hearing this and maybe like you're rolling your eyes, maybe try it for one night and just kind of see like, all right, if we can manage one night of sleep, like, do I feel more human the next day, or do I still feel equally like shit? And if you pay attention to it and you notice, oh, okay, no, wait, like I actually do feel better, then you can kind of like follow through with that.
Yeah, it's like you literally
So
feel like you pulled an all-nighter forever, right? Like I just didn't have kids that slept through the night. So I had friends whose kids slept through the night, and they were getting back to the gym, and they were like losing the baby weight, and they were like cooking. And I'm looking at them going, seriously, like I'm barely surviving. My kids are up at all times. So there's two extremes, right? And so you feel like you're pulling an all-nighter for a long time. So that is why the healthy eating, making better choices, like all of that really comes down to feeling more human, more rested, the least amount of zombie. And that's at least at the very beginning. Okay.
so that's like good for like infancy. So then I want to get through like the rest of the stages, but like
I'll go quickly.
especially
that is just the biggest one.
well, like, so let's come back to that, because I have a question about like this part, but a different question. So like I have a lot of new mom friends, and I see on Instagram culture this perfect mom situation happening. Like, can you talk about like Instagram culture momming and like reality? And like, if I'm granted, again, don't have kids, but if I'm sitting there watching this, like it just seems very overwhelming to see these like picture perfect, oh, at the gym, like what does reality actually look like?
The reality looks like the fact that I would get in the shower with my baby, just because if my husband didn't, I would take showers when my husband got home. Okay.
Yeah.
I would bring my daughter in the shower, and I quickly learned how to do a one-handed hair washing. Okay. Or just not wash my hair for 3 days. Like my oldest two kids are 14 months apart. So they're really back to back. So my husband talks about like this blur. So the reality is that maybe some people just really feel like they're polished, like putting themselves together and feeling polished is a priority to them, because they do live a lot of their life through and on social media. So you have to take a step back and understand that a lot of people are very put together, because social media is either their job, their outlet, what they do, how they relate and communicate. But the reality is that even though I do a lot of that, most of us, we don't have makeup on. We sort of live through the early years like most of us did during quarantine, which is in stretchy pants and big t-shirts. And you just sort of looked in the mirror and went like, this 3-day hair can kind of go one more day. Okay. So that's just, and if you have hired help to, hit the gym, that's amazing. Or if you can go when your partner is home, that's also great. A lot of the things that are posted is sort of like the end result and the very polished result, but not really the process of actually making it to the gym, or like the meltdown that you had with yourself in the car, or, so again, it's really important to look back and understand that what we see on social media is often just that we know it, but when you're in the dumps and your boobs are leaking and you're just like, I don't feel attractive and I don't feel like my old self, like all of that looks like reality, and it just really isn't. So, and also like now I'm over 40, so I don't compare myself to other moms who are much younger than me. So comparing yourself to other women, and maybe you're obviously maybe earlier 30, maybe even you're in your late 20s or early 30s, whatever you are, like looking at someone who hasn't had kids, it's not hashtag goals. That is where they are. Okay. You
Yes,
have to
that's such a
look at,
nice
you
way
have
of
to,
looking at it. I
yes,
like
that's
that.
not hashtag goals. That's where they are. You are at a
Yeah.
different place. So you cannot expect yourself to look, behave, and focus on what they do for their life. You're just at a different
And
place.
you
So
know,
finding an adjustment is it.
yes. That's so funny. And you said, oh, like when you're younger in your late 20s, early 30s. One of my friends who's maybe like a year older than me, and I'm in my early 30s, she just like had a kid and they said she was a geriatric pregnancy. I was like, who the hell came up with that term, geriatric pregnancy? Like that sounds awful in your early 30s, but that's what they call it. But that made me laugh
Yeah.
when you said that. Okay, so in the beginning, it's all about prioritizing
Yeah.
sleep, trying to get back to yourself, not comparing yourself so much to people on social media, and just like surviving
Doing
that
your
way. What
best.
is the next? Doing your best, right? Okay. And then what does the next phase look like?
So the
And
next
what is the
phase,
age?
yeah. So I would recommend, like, I would say that the next phase is when your kids start school, because there's a drastic difference, whether you stay home or you don't. There's a drastic difference in the schedule. Your day-to-day schedule looks drastically different from when your kids are now going to some type of school, which is, I guess like 8 to 2 or 8 to 3. And then so again, you begin to adjust your schedule a little bit differently. And there, with that, your priorities and what you do before school, after school, because everything centers around that whole school and their activities. So at this later stage, it's a lot easier to, I think by then you kind of have like the sleep figured out, obviously. And by then it's really what most moms come to me for is how do I get my family to also eat healthy, right? Because you just survived a few years of like doing your best and like picky eating, if that enters the picture and all of this. And at this point, you're like so tired of really having this adult situation at home and then caring for little ones. You just want everyone to sort of eat the same thing, adopt similar habits. And
Yes.
so that is sort of like the next stage, right? Like you have health goals for yourself. You want to be active. And now you kind of want to minimize this whole kitchen ordeal and meal making
Yes.
situation of what you want to eat and what your kids want to eat. So that is all about planning. So that is where you really enter I really need to take a few minutes a week and plan, if you haven't done so already, plan your family meals, plan lunches. Even if you eat at the office or make your food for the office, like plan your food, because what you
Yes.
plan, you can execute, right?
Now, what are your thoughts on like, okay, so I have this, I don't want to say argument, discussion with people a lot. Because I have parents who come in and they bring their kids and they are almost I don't know how to put it, like succumbing to whatever the child wants. So like it's the chicken nuggets, it's the mac and cheese, it's like all that stuff. And you know, my argument for that is always like there's not going to be a definitive moment where they don't like mac and cheese, they
Of
don't
course.
like chicken fingers, but then there comes a time where you can't like live on that anymore. So like what are your thoughts on like, I'm going to use quote kid food because like personally
Yeah.
I'm against the whole like kid food thing as like a normal meal, but again I don't
Mhm.
have kids. So what are your thoughts
Yeah.
on like that piece of it?
So there is a time and place for quote kid food, right? So what I ask parents is, do you want to eat bland chicken nuggets every night of the week? And so here they come real quiet and they're like, well, no, but that is the only thing I can get my kid to eat. And I say to that, like, that is the only thing that you can get your kid to eat because your kid's understanding that the food is available. So if the grocery store no longer sold that item of food, the world would not end. You would just find
Ooh, I
something
love
else.
that point. I love
So it's
that.
not about you, it's not about you or the kid, and you don't have to fight it out. It's like, hey, we're out. I want nuggets. They'll throw a tantrum. Okay, that's great, but we have none. What I tell parents is, because you took 10 minutes to plan your meals for the week, okay, the idea is to make sure that there is one element in the dinner is the most complicated situation for most families because we're all tired at the end of the day and so are our kids. So that is why we resort to chicken nuggets and unhealthy choices for the kids, because you want one less thing to fight, right? You've basically fought all day long from the second you woke up. So at dinner time, you're just like, I can't. So that is why parents give up on this. And what I say to them is, you are to make one family meal, right? You are obviously going to make sure that the family meal includes one element at the very least that your child will eat. And then to that, the complaint, the comeback, I'm playing my own devil's advocate here, but the comeback is, well, what if they only eat rice? And that my comeback is, well, take a step back. Nutrition is not about a single meal. It's about taking a look at the whole day and taking another step back and taking an entire week and looking at it as nothing is going to happen if for one meal, all my kid eats is rice. Nothing's going to happen if for dinner, all my kid eats is rice and cantaloupe that I also served at the dinner table. Nothing's going to happen. Like the worst thing that could happen is the kid doesn't eat. Then they'll be really hungry for breakfast. Right.
And then like, is that okay? Is that okay to like send to just be like, okay, then you're just not eating tonight? Because parents, and again, like I'm coming at it with no actual experience. Like parents will say, well, then like, what am I supposed to do? Just let my kids starve? Like, is the answer yes? Because they won't starve, right? They'll eat eventually.
Yeah. The reality is our kids are not going to starve. We live in a first world country with nourishing foods. And if you are listening to this podcast, you are already doing a great job by feeding and providing for the kids that you have or want to have. So one meal, the world isn't ending. No one's starving.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not about fighting it out. It's about saying, this is what we have tonight. What would you like to be served on your plate? Or let them serve themselves. It's about offering it in a buffet form. Okay. So like, it's kind of like going to the buffet where everything's served and everything's out in the open and you just get to pick what you like, right? You're not going to serve yourself everything that they offer, not from like an overeating standpoint. It's just that there's some things that you don't like. So,
and what are the benefits to like the kid? Like, what are the benefits, like doing it this way? Because obviously, some parents might be listening to this and they'd be like, ooh, that sounds like the right thing to do, but it sounds difficult. Like, what does the parent get from doing it this way? And then what does the kid get from doing it this way long term?
Yeah. So the biggest parent benefit is the establishing, number one, authority of who makes the decisions in the house. And I know this is a novel concept for some people, but your job is not to be your kid's friend. Your job is to be your kid's parent. So therefore, you did your job by cooking and going to the grocery store, cleaning the food, putting it away, making a plan, cooking the food, putting it on the table. That is a lot of work already. So you did your job. Okay. Their job is to choose what to put on their plate. So that is where the end of the responsibility ends for you. After you cook, clean, grocery shop, put everything out, and then cook and then clean up the kitchen one more time, that's where your responsibility ends. What you're teaching your child is, number one, you're supporting their need for independence, which is why kids fight parents at that dinner table. This is I have an entire podcast series, which I'm happy to give to you as a resource. But what kids really are doing is at dinner times is being assertive with one thing that they can control, which is food. They can control the food that goes into their mouth. If we really take a step back and look at our kids' lives, they really can't control the clothes they have, where they go, what school they go. Like their life experience is pretty much dictated by what the choices that we make as adults. So food is the one thing that they can control and assert, hey, I'm an individual and I get to make this choice. So what you're doing is really providing an opportunity to learn how to make decisions. And if you're putting out healthy or good for you, nutritious food options, then they're learning to make a decision with good available choices, right? So we're not eliminating the nuggets and the pizza. There's a time and place for that. What we're trying to do is not use those as the kid option.
Right.
Like I go to a restaurant, there's no kid menu for my kids. They get whatever's on the adult menu, right? So that
Love
maybe
that.
I get, when my kids were younger, I tell them, hey, you guys get to split something, right? Because honestly, an adult portion is, for those
Right.
that are looking for cutting costs, but they get to choose something from the normal menu, which is, quote, a privilege. And two, it helps, you can hear kids negotiate. Okay, so sometimes, like, say you get the protein, right? Like they'll choose a chicken, but they get two sides. Okay, well, which one do you want? Which one do you? So they learn to negotiate. And so from early on, I made them, okay, you get to split something. So you guys figure it out, right? So I'm
I
putting the
love that.
responsibility on them. And that is how you can also teach them how to make nutritious choices, even when they're out, because they have to learn to they negotiate with their siblings like no one else over who gets what. So again, you are eliminating that kid option both at home and out, and making it special. Like I remember when my kids used to think like Chick-fil-A was like the coolest thing ever, because they didn't get nuggets and they didn't get stuff. And so it was special to them. Right.
Yeah, they can actually like enjoy it. So like, all
Right.
right, so that's amazing advice for people who are just
Sorry,
kind of
we
like,
went on this whole like mealtime
no,
discussion,
that's
but
great.
that is
No,
such a
no,
rough
this is
time.
important.
Because as an adult, you want to make, you're like, okay, now it's my time. I want to, maybe you're looking into
Yeah.
working with a nutritionist, or you're looking, now that your kids are in school, you're more focused on your eating habits, right? That's probably a lot of people come to you with kids around this
Right.
time because they want to focus on their food choices.
Right.
So
So
yeah.
like if okay, so just to put one more point to that. So if
Mhm.
somebody's entering this stage in their, with their children, like they can kind of just like start off with this advice, which is amazing. If you have somebody that kind of like fell into the short order cook trap and they're making 500 meals and this and that, do you have any tips for the moms or parents, dads out there who are kind of already doing that, but they want to like shift the culture in their household? Like, how do you do that without creating like drama every night?
Yeah. So I say yes because I've been there myself, and none of this advice is from like the podium or anything like that. This is advice from the trenches. Um, and a lot of this it really depends on your kids' ages. But I have a lot of parents in my community that I have 5 cookbooks. So all of my favorite things and the things I try with my kids, they've gone in my cookbooks. And I have a lot of parents that involve their kids in the recipe selection process. And they do that by
Smart.
letting them pick a photo. If you are a Pinterest family, then sit with one of your kids on Pinterest, and the kids, you believe it or not, they're bombarded with so many visuals already through electronics and games and the shows that they watch, that for you to sit there with a healthy eating Pinterest board and letting them, whatever your favorite, everybody has a healthy recipes, or everybody has like a Pinterest board that they aspire to cook from but never get to. So my suggestion is to let your kids browse through it and let them take control of the meal. And if there's something that they don't like, say, okay, well, or like, oh, but yeah, this one looks good. There's way too much green on it. Okay, well, you know what? We could serve the broccoli on the side, or just letting them go, okay, I'm putting together the grocery list. What can I get for, who you get to pick the fruit of the week. You get to pick X, Y, and Z of the week, right? So it's almost like letting them step up into being part of the decision.
I
And
like that.
and you know what? You should still keep pizza night. You should still keep
Yeah, of
some of those
course.
breakfast for dinner nights. Like we have all of those things. You should still once in a while get pizza delivered. Why? Because it's part of the
Normal.
normalcy. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
exactly. You're
normal.
not
Yeah, you just don't want that
eliminating
to
or
be the staple.
depriving. Exactly.
Makes sense. You just don't want that to be like the normal. You want that to be like the fun
Exactly.
thing. Okay, cool. So I love all of that so far. Okay, so then what does the next stage look like and what are some of the challenges there? What ages does this next stage start at?
Yeah, so I would say the preteen, teen is when your kids are older. And that is the reason I call that the third stage, is because you are literally chauffeuring everyone around. They are involved, your kids,
Literally. I don't know how
they're
these parents
literally
do it.
involved in
I don't
activities.
know.
Yeah, so that is where you kind of like, during those years, you kind of stick by the family calendar. And because you divide and conquer, you are at this practice, somebody else is chauffeuring this, and someone else is catching a ride home with somebody. And then, so it really is about that. It's just busy. Like, I don't know what else to describe it. So that's where parents, when they come to you and they're like, I'm just so busy. I don't even know. It's the overwhelm of having too many things and commitments on your plate that they're not often yours. They're more like your kids' life commitments that because they don't drive or they're minors, you are committed as well. So this is where, again, you have to really stick to planning. Part of the challenge is to have like dinner or family meals together, because some people they don't even get home until 8 p.m. That is like a big complaint that I get from a lot of parents in my community. They're like, okay, well, we get home from school for like an hour or two, and then we're gone until like 8. So to me,
Yeah.
to them, I say, hey, there's nothing wrong with having dinner at 4 p.m. Like,
Yeah,
you don't have to have dinner between.
like, why don't you have dinner early bird special style, and then like almost have like a snack when you get home, like almost reverse when you would have like an afternoon snack and then dinner. That way, you don't want to fall into the trap of like having dinner at 4 p.m. and then you're starving at 10. Now you're looking for something at 10. But if you have dinner at like 4, there's nothing wrong with that. And then like have like a healthy-ish snack at like, 8, and you'll be good to go.
Yeah, that's exactly what I recommend. Parents are always like, well, what does that before bed snack look like? And I'm like, those amazing Pinterest boards that everybody looks at, and just like, oh, those bins in the fridge with like the cuties and the cheese sticks and the yogurt.
Oh my God. I want to be one of those people so bad, and I'm so not those people.
Okay, well, literally when I talk about like the snack list for before bed, I tell people like, it's just the same thing that you would want to include in those cute bins, right? Like, it's your yogurt, it's an apple and peanut butter, it's your cheese stick and something else. It's a zero cooking experience, folks. There is no cooking at 9, 10 p.m. Okay. And if it looks like a bowl of cereal, that's okay too. Okay. It's really about adjusting, being more like understanding that later, as your kids are getting older and your calendar is busier, you may have to just shift your meal schedule. I know a lot of parents that literally pack thermos lunches almost every day for their kids and themselves during this stage of life, because it's a real wholesome meal, right? Like the same thing you would have for dinner, they will have it at lunchtime, because why not? Right. So again, it's not following the traditional, what's set out for everyone. It's just about doing what works best for your family and really taking that approach.
Love that. What are your thoughts on parents telling kids to clean their plate?
Before we get into that, can you say yes to any of these questions? Are you somebody that knows what they should be eating, but you just can't do it consistently? Are you very like all or nothing with your eating habits? Do you feel like you have a really tough relationship with food, where food is in control of you, you're not in control of it? Do you find yourself like chronically on a diet? Or do you find yourself like talking to yourself very negatively around food? Like, oh my gosh, why did you eat that? Or what's wrong with you? Or like, if you want to lose weight, you shouldn't be doing that. Do you find yourself doing any of these things? If you do, you can go on any diet program that you want. You can do whatever you could possibly think of. None of those things are going to solve your problem, because your problem is all in your mindset. I realized a long time ago, very early in my career, that there were some people that maybe just didn't know what they should be doing, and they just needed to learn the right way to eat for them. But there are so many people that know exactly what they should be doing, but their mindset around food prevents them from being able to execute consistently. And a lot of times, this came about when you were a kid. This came about from your parents. Maybe this weight and food have been a lifelong struggle for you. The Weight Control Blueprint course, and like I said, we only do it a few times a year. We're going to be starting it live September 13th. So signups are starting now. So if you joined our waitlist earlier, now is the time to pull the trigger. Guys, this program has been life-changing for people. We worked with people from Overeaters Anonymous. We've worked with people who swore up and down that nutrition and food and weight was always going to be a struggle for them. And now it's not, because we actually fixed the problem. This program is designed to show you exactly how to rewire your brain using psychology, using nutrition, using every tool in the friggin' toolkit to allow people to change the way and rewire their relationship with food. Like, even I'm impressed by it. Last year, I had one of my friends join. And she said to me, she's like, I'm just joining this so I can prove to you that you can't fix me, that I'm always going to think like this, and this is always going to be a lifelong struggle for me. And at the end of the program, she turned to me and she was like, I can't freaking believe that you did it. So guys, if any of this is registering with you, there's a link below. Please don't hesitate, sign up. I like to keep this group nice and small, and we already are 10% full.
Oh my gosh. So I was born and raised in Spain, where there were kids starving in Africa, and you have to clean your plate. And so I grew up with that. And I also grew up with not having a really great relationship with food. So I think a lot of that can be eliminated if you take a step back and allow your kids to be more independent and deciding what goes on their plate. Kids have a natural tendency to eat more intuitively, given the opportunity to learn how to eat intuitively. Okay. So a lot of this is, I teach my kids, I'm like, hey, you can come back for seconds, but if you overserve yourself, like if you eat with your eyes is what we say in Spain, but if you overserve yourself, you're going to eat what you put on your plate. What we as adults find that our adult portions are much larger than what our kids can actually eat. So I would rather, if you just need an adjustment for this, use the salad plate as your kid's dinner plate. Not because you're trying to restrict food, but because portion speaking, kids under 10, they have smaller stomachs, they have lower nutritional and caloric needs. So it's unfair to them to clean their plate when we're serving them ginormous portions. So it's better to come back.
All right. Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. And all right, so I was babysitting my niece last week actually, and she's 5, I believe. I think she's 5, 4 or 5. And we we ordered in pizza, whatever, and she didn't finish. And then my fiance was like, oh, you got to finish. And I was like, no, don't say that to her. But then she was like, oh, you want to take me out for ice cream? So it's like, all right, are you actually full, or do you just want to jump to dessert? How do you know the difference?
Yeah, so this is a tough one because for some reason I have a son who is too busy to finish chicken, rice, whatever our dinner is. But if I suggest ice cream or some kind of treat, that he always has room. So it's a fine line I always tell parents, if dessert is something that is served every night at your house, then do not stop doing what's norm. Okay. Now, the thing is, okay, take another step back.
I have different thoughts on that, but that's where.
So the thing is that most parents use dessert as a bribe. If you eat this, had different thoughts. Hey, totally. If you finish your broccoli, you get X, Y, and Z.
Yes.
That's okay. So the rule, exactly what there is, I have zero tolerance for if this, then that. Okay. Because, it's the wrong reward. Okay. So, we'll kind of leave it at that because I have an entire resource center on that, but, you got to take a step back, meaning before dinner, I have about a 2-hour cutoff time. Before no snacks or so, 2 hours before dinner, because the reality is that many kids do not enter dinner time hungry for meals.
Interesting.
And so if you I'm going to give you an example, take 1/4 of a cup of goldfish, put them in a bowl, and now put water, about 1/2 cup to a cup of water. You will see visually that the goldfish will inflate, and now the volume is 4 times the size.
Yeah.
This is exactly what happens when our kids eat a snack. And I'm using goldfish as an example because it's a real easy visual. But when they eat something like goldfish or a few crackers or whatever, about 30 minutes before dinner, because we're just trying to hold them off so we can get dinner on the table, right? We're just trying to keep them occupied. And the idea is food should not keep your child occupied. Food is a snack or nourishment, right? So where I know the intent is well, like, hey, I'm just trying to keep them away from the kitchen so I can get dinner on the table. But surprise, surprise, by the time they get to the table, that small handful of goldfish, it's now 4 times the size. And now they're not hungry, right? So
Yeah.
without hunger, there's less incentive to eat whatever food you made, even if, or, that's why they're like, oh, I can't finish X, or I'm not hungry, or they're less prone to trying something that maybe they had 3 times ago and now it wasn't a favorite, and you're trying to reintroduce a food that, or make something new. So the idea is like, that's why I say, wait, let's take a couple steps back. Make sure that even your child, you want your kid to enter dinner time, the equivalent of you going to the grocery store without a shopping list and hungry. Okay. I think we've all been there. Yes. Because that way your kid is not going to resist whatever food you made, meaning, again, remember, you're making one meal where there's at least one element that they can enjoy, because that meal is something that you are trying to use as staying on track with your health goals. Okay. So that maybe there's chicken and maybe they don't eat the broccoli, but they'll eat the rice, and maybe they eat the tomatoes and not the broccoli. Right. So 1 or 2 elements. And then if your kid is hungry and they serve themselves what's portion appropriate for their size. Okay. You're not feeding a teenage boy who just played sports for 2 hours. You're probably feeding a 5 to 8-year-old who might or might not had a snack too close to dinner. And now they're like, okay, so there's a lot of variables here, but the idea is to really make sure that our kids enter meal times hungry so that they eat the foods that you have so taken the time to prepare that meet your health goals as well. And then 30 minutes down the road or an hour down the road, if you had a treat already prepared, then they can have an adequate portion of that because you already had that planned. Not because, hey, because you ate broccoli, now we get to eat ice cream.
Yeah. And I really like in my program and, all the clients that I work with, the adults, I really like to differentiate entertainment eating from like fuel eating. So like in my mind, they're not the same thing. Like, I mean, this is not a child appropriate analogy, but I compare, like, you don't drink water and vodka for the same reason. So you don't eat like cake and broccoli for the same reason. So like that makes a lot of sense. Now,
that's why I was saying, like, there's no if then this, that. If you already had a cake planned or cookies planned, like I'll make cookies in the middle of the week, usually at a time, and I don't even announce it to my kids. It's just like I made a meal that's balanced and they like, and it went over well and no one threw a fit over it. And then I just bring out a cookie per person. And I was like, oh my God, like it's like the biggest surprise, right? So I already had that in mind. Yeah. It's not a reward. It's, like you said, entertainment
it was planned, right?
Exactly. So I have the same differentiation as well. It's never a bribe and it's never a reward for a food-centric behavior.
So I think this is probably the most important question that I'll probably ask you. How do you get your child to have a healthy relationship with food? Because it's very difficult for parents because there's this aspect of, okay, I need to be controlling what my child is eating because, like this is what I'm in charge of, right? Mm-hmm. It's what's nourishing. It's what they're being made out of, literally. But then you mentioned before, which is so spot on, is that food and control go very hand in hand. So, that's where even like eating disorders mm-hmm. come from, because, that's literally the only thing that you have physical control of, until you're probably 18. So how do you kind of like respect that boundary and that balance? Like you mentioned before that your kids don't eat snacks for 2 hours before. Like if that were me and I was a teenager and I didn't have a good relationship with food growing up either, I'd been like, watch me. And I would have tried to like sneak stuff. So like, how do you like be the person making the right decisions, but also setting them up to have a very good, healthy relationship with food?
Yeah. So this is really a loaded question that I'm often asked as well. And this most simplistic answer, and then I'll elaborate, is that the relationship that your kids are developing with food is the one they are observing you have. And I'm going to repeat this. You are the mirror and you are the teacher of the relationship that they have with food. and with their bodies and with themselves. So if and they come to, for example, they'll come to you because they are seeking to make better food choices, be on a better health plan, like within themselves and an eating plan. And then they want to bring their family along. So they are motivated. You often, I'm not speaking for everyone that comes to you, but I'm saying oftentimes the first step towards motivation is usually weight loss, especially after kids. And so when we verbalize and make it so apparent that the reason for being healthy or eating healthy foods is for weight loss, as opposed to healthy living for longevity.
Oh yeah, hit the nail on the head.
So our kids adapt that. Not only they unconsciously learn it. Okay, like we have all done this. We've all done something and then taken a step back and go like, oh my gosh, I just became my mother, right? Like I just did this like my dad or whatever, right? And you're laughing because it's happened. Yeah. Like for me, it was like making the bed, like, oh my gosh, I just pulled my grandmother on this. Okay. So why? Because we inherently learn these behaviors by observation when we're kids, that they surface as adults and as teens and all throughout our life. So if you want your kids to have a positive relationship with food, the first step is for you to show them what that looks like. How you speak about food, how you speak about yourself, how you just by changing the words, oh, I ate bad today, to, oh, I indulged in a few treats today. And tomorrow I get to make really great food choices. Oh my gosh, I can't wait for X, Y, and Z tomorrow because I'm kind of feeling a little full from like the 2 slices of cake I had. So it's shifting the shame on me for making a bad choice, right? Because that puts the blame on you. And it also, you are adding a descriptive label on who you are from a decision that's quick, that you have thousands of these decisions. So over time, your kids learn, if I eat cake, I'm bad. If I eat a lot, if I have 5 extra pounds, I'm no longer worthy. If I'm struggling with X, Y, Z, I'm less deserving. When in truth, if you're 5, 10, 15, 20, 100 pounds over what your goal weight might be, you're just as deserving as the person of everything that life has in front of you and offers you, as a person who's already achieved their weight goal. And now that person has other problems. Okay. We all have them. But the thing is, back to kids, is that they are learning from your behavior, what you mimic, how you speak to yourself, even about your clothes. Like if your husband or spouse or a friend gives you a compliment and you instead of like accepting it and say, oh, thanks, instead of saying like, oh, thanks so much, and you downplay it as it was no big deal, when in truth, you elaborately spend like 20 minutes trying to figure out what to wear or on your hair. And now you just kind of put yourself down. Your kids are learning everything. Okay. So yes. So with food is the same thing. The foods you purchase, the reasons for which you purchase this, like no one's going on a diet in this house. We are all getting to eat more colors and more nutrition, right? Like the word diet is, even like when you have food allergies, and I deal a lot with parents that have a lot of food allergies, it kind of bugs me that there's no better word than saying than for the descriptive of like gluten-free diet, because the word diet itself has a restrictive connotation where, so I like to say, hey, we're naturally going to eat foods that are naturally gluten-free, as opposed to going on a gluten-free diet, right? So
that's a great tip. I like that.
Because you want to reframe the experience. So the idea is that you want to reframe the experience through which your kids live and learn about making good eating choices. Do we all have a day that just goes out the drain? Yes. Whether you're trying to lose weight or not lose weight, everyone has an eating day that looks like pizza takeout. And, it looks like, waffles for breakfast, drive-through for lunch, and pizza for dinner. Everyone has a day like that. But like you said, it's not the norm.
Right. Okay, that's awesome. I love that advice. And I can't tell you, like, it's hard. I get a lot of clients who bring their kids in and, they immediately start talking about weight. And I'm like, Tio, child, leave the room. And then I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Like, you can't talk. And then it's really difficult because it's like, they're like, well, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to like not talk? I'm like, no, you're not supposed to talk about weight at all. Like when you're eating well, a symptom, if maybe you have an extra couple pounds, is that comes off. If your blood pressure is high, that will come down, whatever but they're symptoms. It's not necessarily like the goal. But, then we have situations with parents where, they're like being restrictive and telling them they can't eat this and they can't eat that. And it creates this like closet eating situation a lot of the times. And parents are like, well, what am I supposed to do? Just not say anything. And I'm kind of like, yeah, you're really not supposed to. This is like, of course, for like teenagers, older kids.
Yeah.
You can't tell them, you can give them boundaries, but you can't tell them not to eat this because you're setting them up to have a really poor relationship with food. But I really love that advice of like, mimic it yourself.
I mean, because if you are a closet eater, your kids are going to become a closet eater, right? If you're a closet drinker, they'll do the same. What is seen as the norm is what your kids learned that's the norm, right? If you run a very restrictive household, they are going to feel restricted and therefore rebel and make poor choices. Okay. The things that we know to be true in life, the things that we know to be true in life are the same with food.
Like, that can be in terms of like, God forbid, like an eating disorder, or it could also be somebody who, is overweight or obese or something like that. Like that's the same problem manifested in two different ways, but it comes from the same problem. So, a lot of parents, of course and that's what I tell all the kids that I work with too. And like, regardless, you need to understand that your parents have the very best intentions, but nobody hands you a manual when you are, a parent that says like, this is what to do, so like, we really try to like advocate for the kid, but we also need them to understand that like, this happens just because, they have the best of intentions for you. They just didn't execute the right way. So that's great. I love that. Are there any other stages, or is that kind of like that teenage years, or that's kind of like the final stage there?
I mean, honestly, when it comes to family meals, that's sort of like the third group. This is very household specific, and it was very generalized, but that third stage is also one that's an opportunity because they're going to leave the house soon. So this is a time where I just want to say this last thing. This is an opportunity for our kids to learn how to eat for themselves down the road. So for them to be involved in making meals, you are busy. Your kids are not too busy. Why? Because they're spending hours on Xbox and social media. So they have time. Okay. So delegating and getting them involved, and like you said, if they're okay with their weight, but they're trying to get their child to lose weight, this is not a problem with their child. This is a whole family problem. Okay. Not problem is the wrong word, but like, this is a whole family lifestyle. Okay. To where you should eat the same meals. You should be encouraging at the same time, regardless of what it is. Why? Because that's what the Ward family is. We're in it together. Right. So it's
interesting you say that
losing.
Yeah, I have a lot of clients that come in with siblings, right? And maybe one sibling's overweight and the other one isn't. So, my suggestion is, what, like right now it's really hard for Susie to have X, Y, and Z in the house. Maybe let's kind of make it like you guys go out for ice cream. There's not ice cream constantly in the house. And then the answer I always get is, but their siblings can eat it. I'm just like, first of all, like, define can, like, of course, everybody can eat it from time to time. But like, again, if she has that nice little fast metabolism now, we all know that shit doesn't last, right? And then what happens is she's eating ice cream every day.
Yeah. It's about like, again, the good versus bad, right? So what, one of your children is bad because they can't eat it? Like, no, right? Or are the other kids behaving badly for enjoying an Oreo? No. Like, you cannot, when you have multiple kids, and I have very different kids myself. One can do this. And like when I had a son who could not eat gluten for many years, everybody else went gluten-free. I wasn't making multiple meals, and hey, we just found stuff that was naturally gluten-free, and everything else they got to eat at grandma's house, right? Like they got the stuff that's full of gluten, whatever, somewhere else.
Yeah, that's what grandparents are for.
Exactly. And it's not about losing weight now. It's about establishing habits that you can, so that you can live a healthy and long life, right? So if you are 100 pounds overweight, yes, you want to lose weight, but what do you tell your kids? That I want to see you walk down the aisle. I want to see you graduate college. And it's going to be very hard with this excess weight because unfortunately, that's going to cause my body to have high blood pressure, thyroid issues, hypertension, like you name it. And when I get to where 15 years on the road, I want to be living my best life so I can enjoy your life as well. Right. So it
Yes.
becomes less about the weight and more about the quality of life.
Right. There's a very big difference between somebody intentionally trying to lose weight, because there's too many ways to get there. Like, God forbid, you can get a disease and lose weight. That's not in line with a healthy lifestyle, versus like you're just optimizing your eating habits. And a side effect of that happens to be that you get to a weight that's maybe more optimal for you. So but
Yes.
they're different paths with the same end result, basically.
Yes.
Very cool. Okay. Last question. What are some like quick, easy meal ideas for like crazy nights for people who hate cooking? That's a little on the spot, but do you have anything?
Yeah. So my biggest tip is to keep it simple. The least amount of cooking, the better. So that means open up your fridge and see what's already in there. Do not pick up the phone and call delivery. Open the fridge and freezer and see what's there. And then go, how many colors can I put on the table? And then the number two, like food does not have to match. Okay. Like you don't have to have the protein plus carb, like at every meal. Like it could just look like I'm going to throw a fruit salad. Like my favorite things are like, I'm just going to throw some fruit salad on the table where there's like different fruits that not everybody eats the same fruit.
Yeah.
Like everybody has some in there.
That counts. Oh, I love that.
Totally. And then some like scrambled eggs and some crusty bread, or, like
cool.
No fuss meals. Like, so we'll have like protein. We'll have breakfast for dinner is another huge one. We know that Thursdays, I'm like just trying to make it to the end of the week in the office. So we have breakfast for dinner on Thursdays, and that could look like scrambled eggs, some kind of fruit, and even scrambled eggs and bacon, or, and then I'm big on like fruit salads and stuff for dinner, because we try so hard to get our kids and family members to like eat fruit throughout the day that they become, and that when we forget that could be a great, nutritious carbohydrate. Like it doesn't have to look like a starch. It can look like so even when I create meal plans, I often put like a cantaloupe, and people look at me like, seriously? I'm like, oh, very serious about that. Like it's nutritious.
Yeah, that's a carbohydrate. Not everyone knows that. Not everyone knows
exactly.
They are.
So meal ideas. So grilled sandwiches, like with I make everybody like have a protein, have a carb, and then I know I sound like a broken record, but also like fruit. I also make, like, I'm trying to really think, like, I just got an air fryer. So that thing seems to be able to cook everything and anything. Okay. So even if you're like, oh my gosh, this chicken, I don't want to like mess the kitchen, I just throw it in the air fryer. So like, I recommend you just take a look at it. Like you just said, like a bit of a food group situation, but also just what's available and what can be cooked quickly, and forget about matching and some quote recipe. You could just have this thing and that thing and put it out. Like it's, like, which I do.
It could be like an adult Lunchable, like a charcuterie situation.
That's exactly. Bring it out. And it doesn't, it could look like, obviously not every night, but like pasta and frozen veggies. So you can be boiling pasta if you whole grain pasta, or even I really like chickpea pasta because it has more protein, higher in fiber. And then when it's almost ready and done cooking, you can open up the freezer and you have frozen vegetables, throw the frozen vegetables in there. And so they kind of speed up the cooking. And then you can just, like one pot, but like boil it as you go. Really just incorporate the elements that your family already eats into something that can be made quickly.
And yes, and what you're also saying is you're always saying like have staples in your house, like have the frozen veggies, have the eggs, have the bread, like have that shit in your house at all times. That way it's
not everything has to be fresh and organic. It could be frozen and organic if that's important to you. But like not everything has to be from the farmer's market and ready and available in these dream fridge goals situation. Okay. A lot of times the dreams happen in the freezer, folks, right there and in your pantry.
That's a great quote. The dreams happen in the freezer.
Yes.
Okay. I know I said last question, but I thought of just one more. If you have one more second.
No worries.
Do you have any quick tips for picky kids? Like, how do you break through that barrier?
So you're going to be so disappointed in this answer, folks, because I'm going to tell you the magic pill does not exist. The biggest thing is consistency and variety. So, meaning you have to make a commitment. This sounds like what you probably tell your clients about their health goals, but picky eaters is the same. You have to make a commitment to offer a variety of foods and that you're in it for the long haul, and to not get your feelings hurt when your kids say, I don't want that. Because we as adults get told no all the time. And your kids don't love you any less because you put food at the table that they do not like. What they're saying is, this is not a food that I'd rather eat. And as opposed to what you hear, the parentship is really weird. What you're hearing is, Mom, I don't love you because you made something I don't like. That's literally what they hear. That's what your brain interprets over and over.
Terrible.
But what your kid's saying is, I don't want that. Right. And so to that, you're like, okay, that's okay. There's these other elements on the table. Here you go. Right. So
got it.
It's about eliminating the pressure to eat everything and allowing them the opportunity to choose from what you've already put out on the table, which hopefully they follow your plan and your recipes and all that stuff.
Right. What are you having for dinner tonight? I'm just curious.
Tonight we have air fryer pork loin and potatoes and roasted Brussels sprouts. Because it only takes 20 minutes.
So you just are going to lay that all out. Perfect. You're just going to lay that all out and your kids can pick what they want from it.
So around 4:00, I'll send a text message to my teenager going like, hey, time to wash the potatoes and quarter them. The baby potatoes are in the pantry. And then
we delegate. I love the delegation.
We totally delegate. Cool. My text messages are always like, or I'm leaving the office, time to preheat the air fryer, like that kind of situation.
Nice.
So yes, my family meals look really simple because they're,
cool.
Something that can be done in under 30 minutes. So tonight actually is Brussels sprouts, potatoes, and pork loin. And not everybody eats everything there.
But that's a great example. I love that.
But that's okay.
Thank you so much. Tell everybody, where can they find you? How do we locate you?
Yes. So you can learn, if you have picky eaters, and about meal planning and healthier eating habits and all the things that you might be struggling with. All of that is over at momables.com, Momables, because mom maids are better than Lunchables. So momables.com. And you can see all my picky eating resources, recipe ideas, lunch ideas, the sort of thing that parents typically struggle with, or over on Instagram at Momables and at Laura Fuentes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura. I appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Michelle.